Welcome to Liberated Land Use, where we're imagining a future in which land is not a tool of exclusion, extraction, or inequity, but a partner in justice, belonging, and abundance. Rooted in anti-racism, pro-Black and Indigenous principles, and a just transition framework, we're making room for transformational change, emboldening you to reclaim the policies and practices that shape your neighborhood, your city, and your life. We're your co-hosts, Yodit Mesvin-Johnson and Jessica A.S. Lita. All right, so I'm going to bring us into space. I'm going to ground us in the land that I'm on and invite you to reflect in the land that you're on. I'm going to talk a little bit about what in liberated land use has brought us to this moment. And then we're going to get started with what I think is a pretty interesting conversation, at least judging by every single conversation that we've had getting ready for today. I don't know about you guys. It is really fun to think and talk about power. We would love to invite you to drop into the chat your name, if you'd like to share them, your pronouns, what land you're tuning in from. If you were with us last session, what's something that stuck with you, or stood out to you? And a question that we'll ask you to ruminate on is, what's a time that you felt power, that you felt powerful? And Yodit and I are going to be answering that question, asking each other that question and answering it as well. So name and pronouns if you'd like to share it, what land you're tuning in from. If you were with us in the last conversation, anything that stood out to you or stuck with you. And a time that you felt power, you felt powerful. As you're considering, I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement of where I'm from. I'm tuning in from traditional Three Fires Confederacy land. The tribes in the area of Michigan that I'm from, or I'm in, is the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi. I'm from originally traditional Cherokee and Choctaw land, and I think a lot about what the histories of migration, both of Indigenous folks on these lands and my own people who fled from Ireland, the potato famine from Eastern Europe, the pogroms of the Jewish ghettos in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And I think about the convergence of those people's histories and how that put me in this particular chair. Very grateful for the traditional stewards of this land, both historic and present, and the folks and the conversations that we've been having to sort of ground us in all of the communities that have been here, are here, and hope to be here. Yodit and I are a queer-led, happy Pride, everybody, women-led, Black-led, for her, not for me, collaborative called Future Root. We catalyze people and communities who are building cultural, economic, and political power at the intersections of race, place, and history to reimagine cities and create more just futures. You are joining us in one of our, I think, most innovative projects so far, called Liberated Land Use, where we're using the city process of Ann Arbor's land use planning update to talk about challenges in approaches to land use, approaches to typical civic community engagement, and what other opportunities there might be. In Liberated Land Use, this is session 5 of 6. It is our last virtual session because next thing is, dun, 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 our in-person session. So if you are in Southeast Michigan, I mean, frankly, if you're anywhere in the world, I appreciate the celebration. You scared the heck out of my dog. But it's our very first in-person conversation. You are all welcome to join us. It's Thursday, June 26th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Appreciate Teresa for dropping the invitation and RSVP for this event that's called Sacred Cities. We'll be mapping memory and conjuring our future. There's going to be a lot of activities going on. There will be music, there will be land blessing, there will be food. And we'd love to see you for the conversation and for the culmination of this challenging and really lovely series. What we're building Sacred Cities, Liberated Land Use, all of our projects on is the theory of change that Yodit and I and the Future Root team share, which is we believe change happens through reckoning, remembering, and reimagining. Reckoning, looking our most challenging histories in the eye, remembering the histories and the communities of resilience and power and strength and healing, the shoulders that we're standing on, and using those to reimagine our present, our future, our communities, ourselves. I want to do a brief recap of the conversations that we've had so far. As I mentioned, this is conversation number 5. Our sessions have followed the Reckoning, Remembering, Reimagining map with 2 conversations for each. In session 1, Exclusion Collusion, we discussed white supremacist histories of land use planning. Session 2, Just Ends Require Nonviolent Means and Language. We talked about how typical practices of community engagement tend to reinforce histories of injustice and exclusion, even when they're well-intended. In session 3, Moving to Remembering, Margins to the Center, Yodit talked to Mama Shu of Avalon Village about what it can look like when community takes center stage. Session 4, From Land Use to Land Us, we talked about just outcomes in approaches to housing and land, and how they must be grounded in right relationship with land, in some ways that can look in really wonderful conversation and relationship with Dr. Megan Pizer, which brings us to reimagining. Today, we're here to talk about power, not to the people and in the people. And our final session on reimagining will be the one in person on Sacred City. Today, we're going to be talking as we go through power. Yodit and I are going to locate ourselves in this concept and this conversation. We're going to be walking through some frameworks of defining power. I heard this phrase recently. It's a reminder of a quote I heard a long time ago, the tyranny of the single narrative. We reject that, we rebuke that. So we're going to be talking about multiple narratives, multiple frameworks of power, all of which Maya may have something to say in a moment again, because Lena, the mail lady, AKA our local murderer, is coming up to the door. Love Lena and her cheese sticks, but man, Maya has some feelings. We'll be talking about those power frameworks, including positionality and what it looks like to get free as we navigate through power and change. We'll talk about power mapping, including locating ourselves in these, the ongoing practice of power analysis, what social change roles are. And if you guys are anything like me, you may find this really liberating, and embracing the gifts of conflict, because we cannot talk about power and change without the discomfort that comes along with that. And a lot of time that necessary discomfort comes in the form of conflict. And what we'd love to do is talk about conflict not as an unpleasant byproduct or something inherently toxic, but something generative that can actually build power, build relationship, build strategy. I think I covered all the things. Yodit, can you think of anything that I left out?
Just how stinking cute you are today. Leave out anything.
It's the books. They make me cuter.
They do. And for folks that don't know, Maya is our unofficial Future Root co-host and co-worker. She is a beautiful Black lab who's behind the scenes there, y'all. Now, I'm excited. I've been thinking a lot about power, particularly in the national context, but also just, as you know, I'm moving away from a very powerful role that I've held for the last 5 years as CEO of New, who will be our partners for our event later this month, and examining power in that role for many years and teaching and training on it. So it's a big topic, right? It's a lot to get into. I'm gonna think, bless her heart, our showrunner is having difficulties. So I'm just gonna message Teresa that she can move the slides because I think she's having trouble hearing us.
I know. I'm okay. I'm fine hearing you. I apologize for whatever happened there.
I'm so glad you're back, friend.
Always appreciate you.
So glad you're back. I definitely do appreciate you. So you can move forward that slide. I first want to just acknowledge 2 of our new ancestors, one of which had a long, beautiful life, 83 years, Miss Shirley Beckley, who is a shero of Washtenaw County, raised here and was a leader here and throughout the state, working as a housing justice activist. We got to work most closely with Miss Shirley. She was a member of the Community Leadership Council when we were working early on in the engagement strategies for Dunbar Towers, which is just opening. They had a beautiful, you know how they lift the beam up to put on top,
The
and
topping off ceremony.
the topping off. It was so beautiful. So Miss Shirley passed away about a month ago. And honey, she had a going home ceremony that mimicked her life and her personality. I was so blessed to be there. And one of the things that I'll remember about Miss Shirley is when I first told her about another program you're involved in, our Champions for Change Fellowship. We had a meeting upstairs here at the News Center, and she was so underwhelmed. And
That's
what
such a good way to put it.
she was, and but what she said is, we have been trying to tell our story for years. And our story is part of the story of the Black histories in this community. And she felt a way that, an organization, and I think she might have called me a whippersnapper, was stepping into a space. I was well intended, but when you talk about intent and impact, but over the years, we grew to have a deep regard and respect for each other. So I just thank our new ancestor for we're going to talk about roles a little bit later, about our roles in social change. And she was an activist and she was at the front line. So I'm deeply grateful for all of what she's left behind for us to build upon and all that she dedicated her life to.
Mhm. And I
That's
wanted to
cool.
bring Yakin
Please.
Hamad into space.
Yeah.
She's an 11-year-old Palestinian girl who lived in Gaza and was killed in an Israeli airstrike on May 28th. She was someone who used her voice and her presence on social media to, in her words, try to bring a bit of joy to other children so they can forget the war. She spoke to fellow kids, especially orphans. In terms of social change roles, I think that from the outside, I would mark her as a guide and a storyteller. And while her loss feels particularly tragic and acute, her presence in the world, not just her loss, but her presence in the world reminds us that our voices can go a lot farther than we think.
Yeah.
Mm.
I pray she is among her beloveds in a place that affirms her humanity. We will miss you, Yaki. Pardon me. So I'm curious if folks in the audience, just while you and I riff a little bit on power, we, I think, both acknowledge and maybe want to foreground that power is not monolithic, right? And it has different meanings for many of us. And we're going to talk about various forms of power. You teed it up: power within, power, through us. And we are intentionally talking about, rather than, I feel like I spend half my time like breaking the bad and another half of my time building anew. But we sort of went back on this session to say, no, we don't want to position it from a power over, stance, but really want to think about how are we cultivating power in the people. Of course, we are not here to empower folks. We believe folks do that. And we know that in the systems we operate in, that it is very easy to have a more narrow view of power. So while Jess and I are kind of reflecting a little bit, we were curious about how people in the audience define power, and we'll share that out a little bit. And I want to also, in addition to this idea of power not being monolithic, Glenn Harris wrote that power is the ability to define reality. And I'm curious, Jess, well, I want to tell you when I've seen you be powerful, and then maybe you could do the same for me.
Mhm.
And I have a lot of instances, but one that it really sat with me. You and I are both a part of the Justice Indeed working group. I think some of our people are here. Shout out to
Yes, they are.
Dustin Shell,
Mhm.
and others. Matthew Countryman, also Dr. Matthew Countryman, is here with us as well. But we were at dinner recently thinking about how the project is wrapping up, and we were talking about the land use project. And there's a moment where, and I'm sitting to your left, where you kind of like that back straightened out and you started to talk about housing and housing justice, something that you love a lot. And I think where I noticed your power was in your groundedness.
Mm.
And I think why I noticed it is that is something that I've been working on a lot, is like feeling power almost from like from my feet up as opposed to from my head down. And so there was a way in which you held the dialogue that we were having where it was, it was, you're a subject matter expert in housing, no doubt about it. But the way that you were engaging the dialogue and holding the space, I just felt the strength and the weight of your powerfulness. And it's always such a delight. I kind of nerd out on you and your housing stuff. I'm always learning from you. Y'all, if you're new to liberated land use, I can talk about racial and economic justice till the cows come home. Housing just is my teacher.
Man, I appreciate that. And that was just a couple of weeks ago. So my memory of that evening is also very clear. And I I'm not sure that I would have identified the feeling that was moving through me as powerful. So it's really interesting to have you reflect that back to me. I know that I do love being in my zone of genius, which is about housing and change. One time, among the many, many countless ones that I have seen you sort of seated so firmly in your power was maybe the first time I saw you give public comment. We had followed different paths to come to the same Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners meeting. We were there speaking on behalf of an affordable housing, on behalf of and in support of an affordable housing development that was coming up. That's very close to being opening now, and this was many years ago. So, yay, that and us. I had already met you, but didn't know you very well. And I love your description of my back straightening because when I think of that evening, the first thing I remember is how you squared up to the lectern. And I don't mean ready for a fight. I just mean that you were so in your body. And
Mhm,
when you were talking about affordable housing, there were a lot of us there, probably including myself. We're quoting chapter and verse on affordability and housing scarcity statistics, and we know what our community needs. And you came in and you spoke about people.
mhm,
And you spoke about how it's not just housing that we need, it's dignity and it's recognition. And while you were deeply supportive of the development that was coming up, your concern was that affordable housing was being used as a virtue signal,
mhm,
for this is how we are, how the county and the city is allowing space for, folks that we are maybe theoretically in support of, but socially would find undesirable. And you were just so relentlessly loving in
mhm,
holding us to account on the language that we were using in while still in support of this thing. And what would I call your power? I mean, it was the love, honestly. I could feel it from your heels to your head. And there was no finger wagging. There was nothing like that. It was just a call in for us to
mhm.
be beloved community for each other.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's very memorable for me, and the virtue signaling is something, and we've talked about this a little bit
Mhm.
before on the pod, just I experience it in a very um violent way, much like how we've talked about community engagement really being tethered to violent systems. And I think the same is true with power, which operates visibly and invisibly. You and I are just touching on, how we kind of locate power within ourselves. And as you noted, it's not necessarily something that folks are, like you might not call that power. And I want to keep expanding that. Um, that definition. And folks are starting to get into the chat a little bit. I'll just share a couple. I think of the ability to enact change, both in small and big ways. Someone else talked about it as a flow state, the things that I lose time engaging in, and also externally seeing power structures, right, that drive systems from within. I want to emphasize that we are thinking about who holds power and how it gets used. And I want to, if I can, kind of define what we mean when we talk about power over, power in, power through. And I'm drawing, I should note, just on a number of frameworks, one of which that's been incredibly useful to me is Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And then I would also say that the Embracing the Gifts of Conflict workbook has been really helpful. So in power over, we're really talking about traditional hierarchical control. Whereas in power in, we're thinking about inner strength that's rooted in our values. You named mine. Love is a core value and a politic of mine, Jess. And then this power through and with or to is what we can draw upon in our collective action, our collaboration, and in our agency. And so some examples of that that come to my mind, one, and how I see the political or the personal connected to the political is we all have kind of conflict archetypes, right? And so at any given time, we can be in that posture of victim where power is over us, right? And I don't mean that we are not being victimized in these powerful systems. I'm really inviting us to think about our orientation to that power. So when, executive orders are coming out, by the minute, right? It activates our nervous systems, that amygdala, our response. And a lot of times our response is to that kind of traditional hierarchical control. And because of the power dynamic, we may be feeling powerless. And I've certainly seen that. I work in the social sector and have seen a lot of that, a lot of reaction to, and a losing, if you will, of that kind of footing or grounding that you talked about. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I would say as an activist, my orientation to conflict as a warrior. So, I'm fighting the power, right? And spend a lot of time in my life in that position, which frankly, for me personally, has not been sustainable. Where I have felt power through me is when I'm aligning with others in collective action. And I like to think about it kind of like you might, a relay run, right? Where we're passing the baton. And in community organizing, that can be really important also for our safety. So having power be less concentrated and more diffuse not only helps us in our own, well-being and helping to mitigate burnout, but can also be really powerful for ensuring that no individual is targeted. What's coming up for you there, Jess, if anything at all?
I really appreciate that you brought in Paulo Freire. Can never, ever talk enough about Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And I named in chat Alicia Garza's amazing book, The Purpose of Power. She names in the introduction that she meant to sit down and write a memoir about Black Lives Matter. And she said, this is actually so much bigger than that. Mm-hmm. And so talked about her evolution of the understanding of power. And it is absolutely, and has always been for her, about navigating through moving with communities, specifically multiracial coalitions. I'm also thinking about positionality and what it means to do a power analysis of who we are in any given space. I name in a lot of spaces that I am a white woman, that I am somebody from a lower class background in probably a middle class background or perceived middle class. Right now, I name that I have a master's level education and a specific vocabulary, that those two things tend to get me taken seriously in rooms and by people before I've even spoken 10 words. And so that's something that I take seriously. I note that as a woman in a misogynist and patriarchal world, that I am coming into systems of oppression that mean me harm. And as a white woman, I'm coming in at a specific nexus of a history of causing harm, often in an attempt to move closer to power and try to avoid the harms of patriarchy through leveraging race and class. It never works. As Brittany Packnett Cunningham, the brilliant organizer and power strategist, talks about, the trains of white supremacy always run on time, and that's true of patriarchy as well. Those come for all of us. They come for all our necks. So those are a couple of things that come up for me. And if you are, whether you are excited about or dreading the conflict conversation, we're going to talk about that more in a few minutes. I would also, oh, sorry, just one more thing real quick. When we talk about power, for me, the very first thing that comes up is change, right? Like, it's not just power to, like, what are we up to? We can sit around like emoting power at each other all the time. So when I think about power, the counterpart to that is levers of change. I am deeply curious about what does change mean? Patricia Hill Collins, I'm just going to read that in, Yodit, because that's beautiful, notes at any given time, we are either the oppressed or the oppressor. And because identity is complicated, because all of us hold multiple identities, often one or more of them marginalized, navigating those spaces with intention and awareness is really important. And it also moves away from that kind of false white supremacist culture ideology of the binary, right, and dichotomies. There are so few binaries and dichotomies. Once again, happy Pride. But the thing that I wanted to bring up is levers of change, that being intentional about what it is you're trying to change is going to influence where you are building power and how. If it's policy, then it's policy makers, the decision makers are perhaps the minds that you want to change. But if policymakers' minds are the ones that you want to change, then it's the constituents' minds that you want to change. And if it's constituents' minds that you want to change, thinking about that is very different than thinking about policy change. If you are looking at a funding track, what does it mean to fund affordable housing, any land change within a community? Thinking about levers of change in funding, whether it's through a foundation, a funding organization, a community foundation. There are a lot of these different funding sources, not so much HUD right now, but that's still a thing. What it means to affect change in those arenas, again, affects how you are assessing your power and your collective power. So I just wanted to bring in levers of change in as we're talking about power.
It's so important, and a lot of my focus and energy is around, Black and brown folks and working class folks, immigrants, queer folk, in the social sector space, right? And there is a way in which, and I just linked Kimberly Jones's video back from 2020. She talks about how when Black folks build power, you made me think about it with the chains of white supremacy, that there is always a power and violent response, right? And a couple episodes ago, you mentioned Tulsa and Greenwood. Shout out to my brother, Dewan Dandridge, who just did the Race for Equity ride. He biked from Black Wall Street in Tulsa to Wall Street in New York City.
Amazing.
And Dewan is a great example of someone who is thinking about where he has levers of change, levers of power, right, to make change. And one of the ways that he's doing that is through Black Leaders Detroit, where they're giving grants and interest-free loans to Black entrepreneurs and change makers. And so that has been something that's been really important to me, is thinking about shifting from a stance of powerlessness that has been told to me based on my identities, right? As a Black woman, a female, a mama, you know, a girl from Detroit, to where do I have power? And just every time, a great example of this, I just spent the weekend in Idlewild, Michigan with our fellows from our Champions for Change Fellowship. It's a racial justice fellowship, racial justice and co-liberation, another project that you are involved in. And one of the participants posted a video that for me embodied like that moment where you do have an aha around, okay, I may have limitations here, but here is where I do have power and I can make change. And so it's really important for me to continue to remind folks who have been pushed to the margins that as Bell Hooks tells us, that at those margins is not just exclusion, but innovation and creativity and imagination. And so that's what we want to stir up. We want to start stirring it up today. We hope that folks walk away today having a better sense of, okay, where do I have influence, right? Where can I make a difference? I want to step back for a sec to invite our friend, Teresa, to join us. Teresa, who also is our showrunner, wrote her dissertation on power. And there's a particular way in which, Teresa, you talk about power that I wonder if you can share with us.
Sure.
And hey, girl, hey.
Hi. I'm mostly over the slightly off throwing moment of like not hearing anything, but I hear you, and I'm glad you all can hear me. So yeah, thanks for bringing me in the space. Basically, the story is I, studied alternative dispute resolution and mediation for this dissertation that I wrote out of a law school setting. And I'd done these practical courses around mediation and I really liked it. And then I wanted to understand, the theory. And that really wasn't so easily apparent. Because the way that dispute resolution operates, even as like an academic discipline, is super pragmatist. And ultimately, what I really came to realize is that the theory is liberal political theory. Like that's what's working there. And, very brief summary, liberal theorists figure people will never agree on most things of substance. People always argue, and that's, dangerous. That's destabilizing to society. And we can ask whose society is being destabilized, right? And so then the central thing that the state is good for and that power will be used for is to just put these disagreements into orderly ways, right? We can never hope to actually resolve anything according to the ideals of justice or anything so high and aspirational, but maybe we can come up with peaceful processes, right? And we'll focus on those, and we won't use power to really settle any big questions that people are fighting over. Those will sort of be just squashed down in perpetuity. And we can talk about what's truthful there, but that's my reading of the Laurel Project there. And that's why power is often so hard to really spot, because it becomes sort of imbued, right, in these processes. And so then I, tried to figure out what concepts of power were around in mediation and mediation literature. And, most of what I found was sort of authority, coercive power, force. And, people would come up with these concerns about power imbalance between parties, that kind of thing, right? And I was like, okay, yeah, that's definitely there. Okay, I see that. And then there's also some awareness, of structural power. So, what amount of power do you have because of who you are in the system? And then, there's some legal scholars that were really aware of institutional power. So, more indirect relationships, and they're being ruled by things like norms, exclusion, disadvantages, and it's sort of more subtle forms of power, I can see. But what I really resonated most with was this framework from critical theory, and they would call it productive power. And so that's the power of naming something and giving it value by that naming. So how a group conceives of itself, and how it's conceived and named, what meaning they give to what they're doing, that has a real effect on the world, right? I think it's a really rich concept. So if we think about the power of a word, rational, civil, Western, if we think of a word also like YIMBY, or if we think of what happens when we say density is actually good, you know, um, that act in and of itself has an effect on the world that can sort of galvanize power. Um, yeah, so and what it does, I think, is it allows us to mobilize around it, and we can, create movement from it. And ultimately, the source of this power in that thing, I think, is like the strength inherent in truth telling. Like, I think that's what people are producing and what they're drawn to. And that truth telling is, pretty unliberal. So I will actually name out front the things I'm for, the things I'm against. I will, gather others across all sorts of divisions around this forceful thing, around this truth, and then I'll fight for it. And I'll fight for this thing that has substance, that is real, that has a name, and I, as time progresses, as we're more critical and more weary, I think a real limitation of it is that it's language and discursive based, so it can lend itself to performativity, and it's not necessarily something that will hold forever. So this like productive power of a truth is something we should hold lightly. Um, and we should be ready to let it go as things evolve. But I think it's still like a really interesting strategy for us to think about as a concept. And I think the way it can help us get more free, which, what we're hopefully talking about here, what our goal is if we manage to garner that uh, productive power to build relationships and to build strong relationships. And, shout out to Marcella for putting that into words yesterday when we were talking about it.
Thank you so much for that. I want to just say quickly that you invoked in me, as you were describing productive power, the Black Power movement. And I'm a child of the 70s and got a chance to kind of grow up at a point where there was some challenging of the civil rights movement and integration as a whole, as a solution to the nation's exclusion and violence against Black folks. And I really appreciate that was important for building self-determination, for building a sense of power, if you will, or rebuffing powerlessness, and focusing on building Black political and cultural organizations at that time, right? And it was instrumental in a lot of what many progressives, including myself, kind of build upon. But I appreciate you also naming that that's slippery too, right? When we, productive power also has, I'm paraphrasing, kind of a timeline, right? And so really important to have that agility or fluidity in that.
I was trying hard not to use the word nimble because I feel like the tech bros have.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll do it for you. Yeah. that it does need to be, and that suppleness that is counterintuitive to the binary that Jess talked about, that we're often presented with. Yeah. Thank you for that. Really good. Thank you.
So I'd love to take that and move into a conversation about power mapping. This is something that I think all of us as activists and organizers could stand to practice a lot more. I also think that this is something that a lot of us do intuitively, and bringing more intention and more specificity and explicitness to it, I think would bring it more power and effectiveness. So in thinking about where power is concentrated, I'm going to be predicating this whole conversation on the example of the City of Ann Arbor's land use planning process. If you are interested in other efforts, other movements, or other coalitions, all of this translates. I'm just going to use me and Ann Arbor land use as our specific starting place. So in terms of concentrations of power, really looking at governing power, individual power, and collective power. And where I spend almost all of my time and interest and curiosity is collective power. The point is building collective power, not just across individuals, but across coalitions. You also want to think about who your nodes are. In nodes, I'm lifting up decision makers as well as influencers, allies, and the spaces that you're in. And I'm going to talk about some examples of that. You want to think about information flow. How is information getting to and across the different nodes? How are folks and groups communicating with each other? And in terms of action, what levers of change are you looking to push? And how is your coalition and how are your coalitions forming calls to action with and for the various nodes? So again, coming back to the city of Ann Arbor and housing and the current land use planning process, who are some of the decision makers? These are all open-ended questions, but I'm going to seed this with some examples. So I'm curious, when you think about the land use planning process, maybe drop into chat who some of the decision makers in that process would be. I would start by naming Planning Commission and City Council. Who are some influencers in these spaces? I would start by naming urbanists, activists, and organizers, community leaders, which is one that I think is often overlooked, and academics in this space. Who are some allies? This is where I think, especially in housing organizers are traditionally not great at reaching across spaces into allies. Here in Washtenaw County, I start mentally with people in nonprofit and social change sectors, always, typically social workers. Those are my first go-tos. Parents, absolutely. School system electeds and administration, disabled folks, people with lived experience in housing insecurity and being unhoused, people who live in Ann Arbor's co-ops, both kinds, University of Michigan and high school students and EMU students and folks from IPSI. Activists and organizers in allied spaces like transportation, sustainability, disability access and power, and BIPOC-led organizations and groups. These are huge groups to look at in terms of cross-coalition, cross-community organizing among allies, folks who share goals and values, but not strategies. And this is something that I think we could be a lot more effective at. What are some spaces? I'll start with myself. So my physical neighborhood, we have a Facebook group and a WhatsApp chat. I would start there. As a self-employed person, I am involved in multiple projects. So my coworkers would be all of my collaborators, many of whom are on this call. A faith space. I am delighted that Wallace Bowie has joined us today. He is an emerging historian and gave a talk a couple of weeks ago at Detroit's Bethel AME called More Than Sunday, where he talked about Detroit's Black churches' histories in providing social support and services for communities well beyond faith services. Wallace, I'm delighted you're here today. I was so moved by and informed by your talk. I learned so much. And faith spaces like that are amazing spaces to talk about building strategy and relationship. Maya has a local dog club gang. We have group chats. I would talk and do talk to my dog club friends and my various group chats. There's a writing group chat, there's an organizer group chat, there's a maker group chat. Like those are the spaces in which I would engage. And I'm curious for you, what spaces look like for you. So this is also letting us know that power mapping is absolutely going to look different for every individual. And when we overlay our power maps, commonalities absolutely emerge across these nodes, across who we consider the decision makers, who we consider our influencers, and who we consider our allies. When we talk a little bit more about conflict, we will talk about mechanisms for clarifying strategy, but the beginning to that is understanding the relationships that we're navigating in. Yodit, I wonder if you could bring us into social change roles. I've been so excited about this.
Absolutely. Deepa Iyer is the author of now a workbook, a book, and a body of work around our roles in social change. And just, I really pulled on this a second time. It was first produced, during pandemic times, but I pulled on it more recently as we deal with fatigue and a real need to clarify and build. I'm thinking about it like potting, right? Like how do we pull around? So each of these circles represents a role in the movement for equity, liberation, justice, and solidarity. And so, I see myself as a storyteller and a weaver. We mentioned already the frontline responders and builders like yourself, Jess, and disruptors like yourself. So if folks are feeling like, I remember Brene Brown did a whole podcast about like, am I an activist, right? In this moment, folks may be thinking, where is my power? How do I map my own personal power? And the social change roles can be a way of finding yourself, locating yourself. And you used the words zone of genius earlier. That's borrowed from Gay Hendricks' work in The Big Leap. And he asked us to think about where are we spending our time. So because we want a relational, human-centered, durable movement of not just change, but transformation in the conditions here in Ann Arbor and in Washtenaw County, but also in our nation, is really important that we're moving in our zone of genius. So encourage folks to pull down these roles, to support DEPA's workbook, don't just take the image, but also get into that workbook and to cultivate these medicines and gifts that we have innately so that we can sustain. Because it's not just 4 years, this is hundreds of years that we are on an arc of trying to dismantle an extractive, harmful set of systems and economies that disconnect us from each other and from the land. And I would say one more thing, which is just, when you put the picture of the power mapping up, it's so helpful to think about like, who are the decision makers and who are the influencers? And I just want to encourage folks to also ask that about themselves. Where can I make influence? Where do I have the power of decision? So I might not be able to get, folks to, as hard as I tried, mobilizing folks to get out to vote, but I have power in this organization that I'm seated in, and I have the ability to seed, to share, to have power flow through more folks in this organization. So really thinking about our domains of power and influence, and then what our role is in this broader movement that we're part of.
I want to do a couple of things. One, for our vision impaired friends, I want to read the roles in, and I want to say briefly why I think this is so liberating. So we have weavers, experimenters, frontline responders, visionaries, builders, caregivers, disruptors, healers, storytellers, and guides. And I started thinking about this a little bit as zodiac signs. And I think that my sign is disruptor with a rising sun. I don't know if I'm doing any of this right, with a rising sun in experimenter and guide. So the reason that I find this so liberating is that when I was first coming into movement work and change work, I was so tired all the time because I was trying to do everything all the time. And I was frustrated with myself for not doing more all the time. And for sure, you can be different things at different times. Thank you for naming that, Teresa. And so understanding that it is actually not my responsibility to do everything all the time, but to find where my roles are.
That's right.
Then understanding the levers of change and the nodes of power really kind of gives me my playbook for how I navigate through my values and my strategies.
Yeah. I want to invite folks that are listening in. If you have questions, please drop those in the chat. And Jess, I love the astrology metaphor.
Right.
It's so good. I'm like, oh,
that's right. I'm a Capricorn disruptor.
I'm like a storyteller with the visionary rising.
That's right.
Libra moon.
That's right. Every now and then I'm in builder retrograde, and that totally makes sense. And for all of these to work, understanding how to navigate conflict is central. I had a really big aha moment on this a couple of years ago, and I may have brought this story into space before, but when I was in therapy, I was trying to understand, why am I conflict avoidant, and yet the only things I work on are development, housing, and politics, some of the most toxic discourse in our country and in our community. And where we got to in that session, in that conversation, is that I am actually really pro-conflict. I think conflict is a very juicy way for us to be human. women together. What I hate is abuse. And what I hate is toxic language and approaches. And our conversation with Right Relationship to Land really gave me a lot of language about not just what I want to smash, but about the kinds of things I want to build. And so that conflict moving into it, conflict connects us more robustly to our values and our needs. It surfaces assumptions between us when we are trying to work together and we are hitting these tensions, surfacing where our values may align, but our strategies are different is super helpful. Again, it clarifies strategies and it brings deeper alignment among those of us who share a why around the how. And that's something that I think, especially housing organizers, could stand to do a lot better. Conflict heals. Generative, healthy conflict heals yourself and it heals your relationships and it strengthens those relationships. I cannot say enough about the gifts of conflict in the follow along. We've put a link to a workbook, Embracing the Gifts of Conflict, which we're drawing on deeply here. There's a link in the chat as well. Cannot say enough about how building the conflict muscle makes all the rest of it possible.
Absolutely. This is a phenomenal workbook. If you just search up the Embracing the Gifts of Conflict, most folks land on a Medium article that Weon and Jovita wrote that links to this workbook. I've used it with clients, I've used it with my team, and I highly recommend it. And I think this getting to know what they offer that often we don't have either introduced or taught to us or even celebrated is that we show up to conflict. It's very contextual, right? And so getting to know ourselves and our responses during conflict can be really helpful. And it can be a far bridge just for people who have been abused to move from a place of seeing conflict as something that's hard and violent, et cetera, to something that's generative. So I do want to be kind of conscious of that. And also in thinking about generative conflict, it is building upon what you said, which is how we view it. And I think that builds well on this question that Adam put about also doing power mapping for one's opposition. So I want to share just, I'd love if we had a little bit more time, Adam, to stay with that. But what I did is to drop an article that Daniel, I always want to say Hunt, but I think it's Hunter, so let me get his name right.
It is Hunter, yes.
Okay, that I was really helpful for me after the election. And in it, he has some ways that we can be prepared. And much to my surprise, Daniel, it was, or sorry, Adam, it wasn't necessarily mapping the op, it was looking for the movable base in moderate Republicans. So I'll keep it brief because of time, but happy to stay on for a little bit after if you want to explore that more. And hopefully this article is useful.
I didn't drop in a link, but I did name in chat that Waging Nonviolence also in their last newsletter included a link to a great article on pillars of support, which is a slightly different way to think about opposition. So again, appreciate the question and space, and that's something that I've been thinking about lately.
Yeah. Bruce, I think we can move on to something we're very excited about. So Jess mentioned that a lot of the impetus for liberated land use was the comprehensive land use planning process in Ann Arbor. And shout out to the folks in the planning department who have participated in the series. And to this point about where we're spending our time, the Sacred Cities event is about our power to create what it is that we want and bringing folks together to conjure that up. And we got Conjure from Sinners. If you haven't seen Sinners, you've got to go see Sinners. It's a excellent movie by Ryan Coogler, who also made many other wonderful movies, including Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. But we're inviting folks here to the new center, which is also a hub of nonprofit connection transformation. This idea was dreamed up as a way to close out the series, and we want to see our community come out. I think we're going to also partner with the Office of Sustainability and Innovation. They're doing some excited community-based and land-based work, but mostly we want to imagine what a sacred city would look like together, and then build our collective power and our relationships for moving forward in that work. So really want to encourage folks to get out. Also want to name and appreciate the Inclusive History Project folks who helped to underwrite Liberated Land Uses media series. And we hope that you'll continue to stay tuned. You'll follow us on YouTube and share the playlist, which will be complete in about a week, but all 5 of our last episodes. And I think just, I will never, ever, ever forget Dr. Megan Pfizer, who gave me new language of co-stewardship as opposed to community engagement. And you know that a question I've been holding this entire series and probably half my life is, what else is there? And that word co-stewardship came up as she was telling us that Oakland University, who's working on their master plan, is co-stewarding that plan with the Michigan Tribal Council and with other Indigenous folk in their community as a result of their work over the last few years to return land to Indigenous folk here in Michigan. So shout out to Dr. Pfizer, and to thinking about, which is my invitation to our guests today, to thinking about a shift away from engagement, which is often nothing more than an insurance policy, and towards co-stewardship, which is actually a sharing and a moving power towards community.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Teresa, for dropping in the links for how to stay in touch. We have a Discord channel just for this conversation. You can find previous conversations, and this one will be up in about a week on our YouTube channel. And please, 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 we would love to hear what you thought about the session, what was helpful, what could have been better. You've got the evaluation link, and we'll email that to you afterwards as well. So please let us know. I feel very strong. Oh, we have named IHP, we have named OSI, we have appreciated Teresa. I want to make sure that I'm naming Marcella Omans-McKeevy, Liz Trudeau, and Anna Boyd, who are doing research and a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes to make this and many other wonderful pieces of work possible. So thank you to the entire extended Future Root team. That's it for this episode of Liberated Land Use. We're your co-hosts, Yodit Mesfin-Johnson and Jessica A.S. Lita. Deep thanks to team members Liz Trudeau, Marcella Omans-McKeevy, and Justin Schell for making everything look and sound as good as it does. To contact us, email hello@futureroot.co. Our theme music is CS Music by Chandrakant Shinde. See you next time on Liberated Land Use.